The DUNU X KOTO ITO. Let's talk about it. The DUNU KOTO ITO is a collab IM with DUNU that's a double dynamic driver dual BA IM. It costs $200 and I obtained this as a purchased unit. Let's start by looking at the build quality of this lovely IM. Fit and comfort of this IM are good. It has a nice nozzle that holds onto ear tips. It's vented. It's slightly recessed 2-pin cable connector. It has clear indication of left and right on it and a little bit of writing on it, which makes it a little bit unique, which I like. I like the faceplate. It's kind of like this foresty green, which is to me really pretty. It fits in my ears well. It isolates well for me. I don't really have any problems with it. I think it's a very nice IM. It's not metallic, but it is feel like a durable, fine IM, but nothing too exceptional as far as build quality goes. This is a nice cable, has a little red for right, black for left indicators. It feels supple in the hands. It has a working chin slider, which you see here. I like the look and feel of this cable. Has a DUNU branded Y split right here. Again, it feels nice, and you can change this from 4.4 to 3.5 if you want, but there is no USB-C cable adapter in the box, which, you know, for some people might be a little bit of a ding. This is a nice feeling case that DUNU's included in a few of their other products. It looks and feels nice. It's a little bit large, but it's pocketable, and it's a nice comfortable case to use. It includes 3 sets of ear tips as well as a cleaning brush, and here's your additional 3.5 adapter. So what is this IM like? It's not like a lot of other DUNU IMs, which makes it, I believe, unique. There's a few other IM comparisons I don't want to make, but in some ways, if I had to make the closest comparison, I'd call it a kind of a baby DUNU Glacier. There's a very strong V with a great amount of bass, but a lot of upper mids to kind of compensate for that bass. It can be interesting. Certain things can be sibilant at low volumes, but at high volumes, this does sound a lot better. There's no sibilance. It's not a bad driver. There's a lot of good things going on. They did a good job with this set, and I find it to be competitive at its price. The instrument separation and clarity isn't as good as you might want for an IEM, even at this price, but it is a very good IEM that's fun, aggressive, and is going to work with certain genres of music like hip hop and other types that need a lot of bass. Or if you really like bass, this is a nice bass head style IEM, and this really compares well to some other really bassy IEMs. The bass is boomy, but can be slightly pillowy, but enjoyable and not overpowering. The note weight is rich and thick, but again, it's not too much. It's a nice amount of bass. It doesn't go over the top. It's a nice, fun amount of punch, slam, and thickness in the sound. The treble itself is clean, but doesn't feel as harsh at moments. It could be exactly what people are looking for, but it's not overly exaggerated, but it's good. There can be some issues with certain tracks feeling like there's a little bit of goom in the bass, and sometimes you don't get as much from your female vocals, which can be disappointing, at least to my ears. It's overall not unpleasant, but I would say that this is a highly colored sound, and for that, it does have some issues with that sound quality. Let's look at some graphs and make some comparisons to maybe better explain what I mean and what I think. All right, let's look at the graph of the DUNU X KOTO ITO. You'll notice there's a ton of sub bass. Like it starts right around 300. It goes pretty high. It is a significant amount of bass, and it is very high. What you'll notice is that there's also quite a bit of upper mids energy, which can kind of help the vocals not sound too recessed, but despite that, it still feels a little bit recessed to me. Like a lot of your vocal energy is still in this 300 to 800 region. So for me, this kind of alters that sound a little bit to something I not like. I probably would like maybe a little bit less of a scoop there and maybe keep everything else if it was up to me. But that's kind of one of my faults with this IEM, but it's overall pretty good. let's look at a few other DUNU's IEMs. Let's get rid of this one for now. Let's just look at the Glacier. And when you notice, it kind of has a similar upper mids as the Glacier. The Glacier has a little bit more detail in that 4 to 5K region, a little bit more air, but I mean, graphically, they look very similar, except this extra amount of bass. Like this amount of bass could be extremely off-putting to people, and that is I think a concern for a lot of people and something to note. Like probably one of my favorite IAMs, if you're willing to mod it, you can take the DUNU DK 3001 and you get very flat bass or flat mids, but a ton of bass and just a little bit of upper mids. This is kind of what I would kind of gravitate towards and recommend. I would love to see DUNU do something like that, but it's the problem with that mod though is it's really hard to drive, and you really want, you could use EQ, but again, I don't really like using EQ even though I know how to. Maybe someday we'll do a video on that, but things get busy. All right, so let's look at a few other IAMs that reminds me of. I mean, at this price point, you have the cheaper Cranier Daybreak. You'll notice that the upper mids of the Daybreak and the KOTO go to about that same region where it's just a few over the target, which isn't necessarily bad, but how do they differ? Well, the KOTO has a little bit of energy here, which, yeah, maybe could be good, maybe could be bad. It's tolerable. But the problem is, I think they both kind of have their issues. And sometimes when you have a lot of bass, that extra bass will kind of drown out some of your vocals, and they affect things differently. Where like the Daybreak, to me, and again, to my ear and how I feel about it, the Daybreak feels way more upper mids focused because of the tuning that it's done. And so it feels kind of brighter and shoutier to me, where the KOTO doesn't have that feeling as much. There's also, like, you'll notice this area region here is a little bit thicker. Like it's kind of this thing I've noticed a lot with a lot of new sets. They kind of have this added, almost like a gradual rise at 300 to 400, just kind of boop, kind of tilts up. And that's kind of something to note as well. And I think that kind of makes the Daybreak a little bit more rich and thick mids as well. Whereas the KOTO is a little bit more, at least attempting to be more delicate in that regards. I don't know. I like the DUNU KOTO. I like it a lot because it's a fun flavored sound. But if you're looking at something a little more neutral, you might like the Daybreak for cheaper. But again, I just wanted to compare this to kind of a hype set that's basically a collab, even though it's from Crin's brand. But that's another debate. Let's look at some other sets. So what this does remind me a lot of is the Grand Maestro. With the Grand Maestro, you do have different modules, so you can get even more bass if you want. But this is just kind of one of those modules. You'll notice the upper mids does look a lot alike, like things. It does have a bit of this 5K bump. That 5K bump might bother you a little bit, and I think that kind of helps prevent it from being maybe great. But it also has less 8K, so it has a different approach. Having said that, this to me is like, what if someone told me that they were going after a sound design of the the Grand Maestro, I would really believe them and think, hey, that makes a lot of sense. Another IM I wanted to show this to you, an IM I really like a lot, is the Punch Audio Martillo. This also has a lot of bass, but it also has way less energy here. And so it feels like it has an overall downwards tilting slope, which to me works really quite well. I think it works really as in a very nice, clean manner for just this amount of bass, and I like that set a great deal. Like sometimes I can't always explain it with graphs. Sometimes I can attempt to, but at least that's kind of my take. I think the Martillo is, like almost $100 more expensive. I think they're competitive. It's hard for maybe me justifying one over the other, but I just know from being it, I like the detail in the air. I know it has some different drivers, which I think maybe do some extra things. Like it has this huge lift here right around 10K, 10 to kind of 13K. And I feel that really helps this pop and really helps to keep this detail limit a little bit less overexcited, and it becomes a really nice, pleasant listen in that regards, and it gets a strong recommendation over the KOTO ITO. But again, it's way more money, and that's maybe not a fair comparison. Another IM I like a little bit more is the Crescent. You'll notice the Crescent does have a little bit of less of upper mids, a little bit more of this 10 to 13K, and that's probably another weakness of the KOTO ITO. It's nice, but it doesn't have a lot of like sparkle. It's a little bit of a dark set, which if that's the tuning you like, it's a fun to have a set like that. And I think this is a fun set, like in that regards. It reminds me a bit of Jay's Estrella in the graph a little bit, even though this guy has more bass. Jay's Estrella, I don't know, it's a fine graph. Some people called it too, energetic or too V-shaped, but it also has kind of an extreme amount of upper treble and air, which you may like. But that's kind of what it's trying to do, almost hit you at every single region. So people might like that better. But again, it's also $100 more. The DUNU EQ, again, it just kind of shows you where it kind of struggles, maybe depending on some other sets that are considered bassy that may or may not work for you. Notice, again, how much 8K and even like 4.5K energy is in that DUNU E2. And that could work for you or not work for you. Again, to me kind of makes this seem too brilliant and too harsh to my ear, because I am a little bit treble sensitive. What a lot of people are liking right now is the $80 Truth Ear Pure. It's kind of the hot thing in the budget market. You'll notice it has a little bit more warmth, which is again really hot, but it doesn't have a lot of sub bass. Has a little bit less and more neutered upper mids and treble. But again, the DUNU EQ does things very, very well, and it's a nice sounding set. Another set that I kind of like is the Juzzier Defiant. That I personally would rec. I would rec this over the Pure or anything else. You can get it with a USB-C cable for a little bit more, so maybe 105, but that's kind of something that I think is great. It has a little bit less bass, a little bit upper mids, a little bit less hiss here, and a little bit more extended of that 8 to 10K region. That doesn't mean the DUNU EQ is bad, but maybe it's not the best value for people that are one and done, and it becomes what I would call audiophile tuned, rather than not really, really well overall every person tuned. All right, the DUNU KOTO ITO, let's rank it up. I mean, it's all around solid. It has really nice bass, but it only has kind of decent mids, decent treble, and kind of a decent technicalities or soundstage. It's a nice set. I think it's an enjoyable set. I think they did a good job. I think it's unique in DUNU's lineup. Speaking of their lineup, let's look at their lineup. How does it do in their lineup? For me, I like the Da Vinci more, but the Da Vinci's $100 more. I like the Brain Dance more, but it's also way more money. It's almost $500. The DUNU Vulcan is probably my favorite overall. The Brain Dance with an impedance adapter, but as far as straight out of the box, the Vulcan's a really good value and a really good set. But again, it's almost twice the price, but I have seen it for a lot cheaper. This is a good IM in their lineup. It doesn't really break things. It's a nice set. It's something that's unlike anything else they have. But I mean, there are other sets out there like the DUNU Falcon Ultra, which we didn't even really talk about, which is a really nice, fun, dynamic set. But again, this does have an appeal, and there are going to be people out there. All right, there's a section I want to talk about briefly. It's called 5-star rankings here. These are just some of the IMs that I think are really worth it. The problem I had before is I had top 10 at each price. Then I had top 10 at, 1 to 20, and a top 10 from here to here. I think the problem with that is that it was harder to maintain and it wasn't fun to maintain. This, to me, you can look at this at one screen. You can see, okay, these are the ones that Jaytiss really recommends, that he feels that are kind of breaking the bank and actually worthwhile. These are what I call my 5-star, most highly sought after sets. This will change over time based off, let's say, something else comes in. Like, let's say something that replaces what I think is a 5-star at, say, $1,000 price. We'll go and replace the Monarch MK4, and same kind of thing at that $400 price point and other price points. There's a lot of other sets out there that are really worth it, but sometimes it's hard for me to really fully justify. And these are the ones that get like the double Jaytiss stamp of approval for you guys. The IEM game is always changing. There's always new tunings at different price points and new IEMs that help accentuate different styles of music or different things. Is this a bad IEM? No, I think it's pretty good. I would give it maybe a 3-star, maybe a 3.5 star for doing half stars in this kind of hypothetical sort of situation. But I do feel that this is a nice IEM for people. I feel that DUNU and the people that made this should really like it. My personal take is a little bit less bass, a little bit less upper mids, a little bit more glidey, and I think that's kind of what I would personally go for, is a little bit more of a tactful V, and that's what I personally gravitate towards myself. But I do think that this is a very strong, fun set. It's very engaging. It's very impactful. There's not very many IEMs at this price that are bassy, thumpy, and do a really good job at not being overly sparkly or detailed, which is kind of something that people may not like in their music, so something to kind of note. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Have a great day. Bye-bye for now.
Go! Go!
Go!
Go on with you!
You're mid, you're mid, you're mid, you're legendary. You're mid. Jaytiss out.